Am I getting you from LA?
No, I live in Texas.
I thought that you would have, not sold out your roots, but you would have had to go, well, I want to get on stage 3-4 nights a week pre-COVID. So you would have wound up in LA.
Well, for me, I never liked living in LA. I wanted to get back to Texas, and I was ahead of the curve moving back to Texas. And, I just needed to wait till my career was at a point where it didn't matter where I lived. So 4 years ago, we moved back. Excuse me, I'm gonna grab my water.
Sure, man.
So yeah, man, I was, it's funny now that Joe Rogan and everybody is moving to Texas. And I'm like, man, this is my home. I was here way before you guys.
Exactly. And people who are comedy nerds like me know, hey, Bill Hicks, Sam Kinison, so many of the comedy greats came from Texas. Houston Improv, was that the club that launched a lot of the folks?
Well, no, it wasn't an improv. It was, I want to say it was the Laugh Stop that was in Houston forever. And I don't know what happened to it, but it ended up going away. And it was such a great club, and it's such a great comedy community. I mean, Ralphie May,
yeah,
Ron White. I mean, the list goes on and on and on,
Right. So bring it back to you here. I love your story. In spite of me not knowing that you were not dialing in from LA, I've done my research and all that. And I love how you've basically started a podcast beyond having the comedy special. Like some comedians kind of rest on the podcast so they don't have to hit the road. Not the case. It's a great family fare and all that. But I'm curious, when in your career, as somebody who really got their first big break at 19, when you knew that this was going to be a career, when you could breathe a little bit easier about it being a career?
Well, I'm still not breathing easier, but I never looked at it as a career. I love doing it. And I guess I took my blue collar upbringing and my work ethic to stand up, and I just did it as hard as I could, and I wanted to become really good at it, but it was never in my mind that, oh my God, one day this will pay my bills. It just did. And I just kept doing it and and adjusting, right? Because I wasn't getting the breaks in Hollywood that my fellow comedians were getting. I wasn't being offered the specials. I wasn't being offered sitcoms. I just kept doing stand-up on the road and earning my fans one at a time, and then fighting really hard to get that special on Showtime, and then going, oh well, I'll just produce the next one on my own. So me and my wife literally produced the next special on our own, and then Hollywood didn't call again, so we produced the next one on our own, and it's just become my model. And I don't do it for the money. I do it because I love it, and we've been lucky enough to make a living doing it.
Before I ask you more about Captain Evil, she's not listening, right?
Oh no, she's right here.
Okay.
Remember, she's always listening. Always.
Well, it's a wonderful thing when you're able to work with your wife. I work with my wife as part of my full-time living, and it's not easy, but it's more rewarding than anything when you work with somebody who gets what it is that you do for a living. So it's great to see that you have that support structure. But what was the genesis of you starting your podcast?
Depression. I was in, so like you said, so from 19 and a half, 20 years old, I had been on the road doing stand-up comedy, minimum 48 weeks a year. And that is my life, coming home, living my life at home, and then going on the road. Well, when the shutdown happened, I didn't realize how much I needed stand-up. And for the first time in my life, I was dealing with depression. I was having anxiety attacks, really, really having some self-worth issues. And then my wife, she said, look, this isn't happening to just you. It's happening to everybody.
Right.
And she goes, we got to do something. Let's do something, And we started doing a live stream from our home. And instead of Pardon the Interruption, like ESPN, we did Pardon the Bitching. And we would both come up with topics to bitch about.
Right.
And we were overwhelmed on the amount of fans that A, were so happy to meet my wife, B, to hear me and my wife kind of have these moments together outside of the stand-up, that it organically turned into, well, shoot, we should do this every week, and we should do it as a podcast. And it's been very healing for me, as an artist, as a performer, because it felt like I was at least doing something. And it was also a really cool way to introduce the world, or at least my world, to my wife. And, me and the wife decided that we're going to play this very real, just like my stand-up. And it just grew, and it got me out of depression. It got me out of, I stopped having the anxiety attacks because I had something to look forward to, something to do. And again, we didn't do it to monetize. We didn't do it to make money. And then all of a sudden, we have a semi-successful podcast.
You say semi, I say fully successful podcast.
Well, I'm no Joe Rogan, but we're.
Well, when you say I'm no Joe Rogan, how many years did it take for him to get to the Spotify deal? I'm going to say 5, 6. That's for starters. How many?
More than that. I think he started doing podcasting in 04 or 05.
There you go.
When nobody knew what it was, but I think that Joe Rogan's a good example of what comedians are, right? You don't have to like a certain comedian in order for that comedian to be successful. Mm-hmm. We all find our audiences, right? And maybe my audience isn't Joe's audience or Ari Shafir's audience, but I have my audience and he has his audience, and somewhere in there things kind of bleed together. But with the invention of the internet and the ability to go straight to the fan, we have no executives for our podcast. We have no standard and practices. We don't have to ask permission to do a bit or to talk about something. And I think the world is changing. I think that the fans enjoy, the goal 10 years ago was, oh my God, I got to get a sitcom.
Right.
And now it's like, hey man, I don't need your sitcom. I make money without your sitcom, and who's watching sitcom? Nobody.
Well, it's my observation that comedians and the people behind comedy basically studied punk rock and singer-songwriters and realized that musicians used to be chasing the big major label deal, and then they'd have 1 or 2 albums. They wouldn't quite get the hits or the numbers that were expected, and then they'd have to go independent. But it was, that 5 to 10% of the reach from the majors that are now diehard fans that were going to see them on the road in packed clubs or small theaters. That same exact kind of thing happened where you could put out music independently, and it's about the people who love you, not about reaching the mass appeal. And maybe 5 to 10 years later, you get that second wave with the development deal.
Right.
That's really how I see it.
It was interesting because Chavo, the bassist for System of a Down, we became friends at the Comedy Store, and he used to go, he goes, man, comics are the last punk rockers.
Yeah.
He goes, you guys are it, man. He's like, you guys are punk rock, man. You guys are doing it the way you want to do it and how you want to do it. So, yeah, definitely very punk rock. I mean, I'm family, my son, my wife, my family, but I'm paving my own path in a sense that, I'm going straight to the fan, because ultimately, these executives, they're idiots.
Usually, yeah.
They have no idea what they're talking about. When you hear stories like Garth Brooks being told no a million times in Nashville, nobody wanted to give this guy a deal. He's the biggest recording artist of all time.
Right.
And nobody wanted to give him a deal. That's insane. Joe Rogan doesn't have a talk show, so he went out and did it on his own. Nobody offered this guy a talk show. He's freaking brilliant. He's an amazing interviewer. He's the new Larry King, and nobody saw that. So, and how many times have I gone into a pitch meeting with NBC or CBS or these networks, and they go, we don't get it. And it's like, all right, man, I'll do it on my own. And, we have done it on our own, and we found ourselves in a position of power, if you will, because we can say no. So, even, somebody like Tom Segura and Christina Pazinski, who they go, look, we don't need your development deal. We don't want it.
Yeah.
You want me to go to LA for 3 months to develop a show for no money to find out that you're not going to pick it up anyway? It's changed.
It has absolutely changed. So it's this interesting business model where somebody like you, and you can tell me if I'm totally wrong, when comedy clubs come back, of course, there'll be more normalcy. You'll be doing those in small theaters until you get to the big theaters, because let's face it, you're a bigger deal than you're going to let on right now. You have that going on where it's going to be, 40-ish weeks a year, something like that. You'll have a special every 2-3 years paired with a CD. You'll have merchandise. You'll have your podcast, which again is growing. It's this interesting multifaceted living where it's not just you go on stage 5 days a week and that's your thing anymore. So does acting factor to something that you really want to do, or you just have enough on your plate?
Acting, of course, if I get something offered that is really cool, but my whole idea when I got into the business was that I wanted to be a stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do stand-up. I wanted to be a really good stand-up. So my focus has mainly been stand-up, and everything else has just been an evolution of the stand-up, and it's grown from the stand-up. And when it comes to my wife, I'm madly in love with my wife, and I think that it comes out in my stand-up. So if I can also work with my wife, then I'm going to do so. And my wife is also a actor. She trained in NYU, Stella Adler. So together we have this career moving forward. And people have talked to us about me and her doing things together, which is exciting. But when it comes to acting, can I act? Probably. But I know that
comedians are the best actors there are. I mean,
always.
Can you name one comedian that is a bad actor? Because I can.
Chris Rock.
On this Fargo season, he's great. But you're right,
Yeah.
He have some bad stuff at the beginning. But I think you're selling yourself short there, because when you said upright at the beginning of this interview that you started the podcast due to depression, when somebody watches you on stage, they don't see one inkling of depression. They see a confident, bold guy that is going to take on the world and tell you how he really feels.
I had never understood depression, and I never thought, I am a confident person. High school was not miserable for me. I've had a great life. I'm a confident guy. So for me, I didn't know that I could ever deal with depression. I'm a positive guy. I wake up every day and I'm ready to go, and nobody can tell me no. And so, yes, I am very confident, but to whatever happened during the quarantine and the shutdown,
right,
really sent me into a place of oh crap. What is my life now? And thank God for my wife to go, it's not happening to just you. It's happening to everybody. So at the end of the day, for me, if I'm doing stand-up, if I'm creating, I'm happy. And it doesn't have to be through a huge network or a movie studio that defines my success.
That all makes sense to me. So having a new special done that came out last month, are you already looking to the next special? How does that work in terms of material for you?
Well, it's confusing and it's complicated because here I was preparing post-COVID to film a special. I had the material ready. We had the hour ready. We were going to film in April because we had gotten a friend of, well, not a friend, he's a friend now, but somebody had came to us and said, look, we really believe that if you can turn this special in, that we can nominate you for a Grammy. So I was like, oh man, like, let's get this in, awesome. And then, man, the world got put on pause.
Right.
So then, now I find myself in quarantine and everybody's going, do a Zoom show, do a internet show. And I just can't convince myself to perform in my living room for people in their living rooms, right? So here we are looking at, income and having to pay the bills and going, well, I don't want to perform a Zoom show, but yet Texas opened back up. I'm performing in front of 50% capacity, social distance audiences. I'm talking about the coronavirus. I'm talking about my life in quarantine. How do I then go get to the fans and kind of accomplish many goals? And the goal is I got to get this material out because it's going to be irrelevant soon.
Mm-hmm.
I got to pay the bills and I want to give the fans something, but I do want to perform in front of an audience. So we decided to film this special that was specifically about my life in quarantine. And then we put the other special on hold, which now makes things very complicated when I tour. Because now I'm going to be on stage in Dallas this weekend. And it's like, well, do I do some of the material from my life in quarantine? And then I go back and do the material that I was working on. So it has become kind of complicated. But again, I think it's just adapting, finding a way,
Right.
and continuing to create and perform. And also, I think that those people, if I was dealing with depression, and I consider myself a very strong person, I think there's people sitting at home who might be afraid to go out to a comedy club, or in the case of California or New York, where they're not allowed to go into a comedy club in person. To give them something new to sit down and have a laugh about what's happening to them in quarantine was important to me too. And then of course, I care so much about our veterans.
Mm-hmm.
We tied in parts of the proceeds also going to the veterans. So I win, hopefully the audience wins,
Mm-hmm.
and my charity wins. So it was kind of a three-part situation of how do I make all this work? And we figured it out. And so far, we're getting rave reviews.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you this, man, because it wasn't your regular stand-up special, I wasn't 1,000%. When I write a special, I want laugh, laugh, laugh,
Right.
laugh, laugh,
Right.
laugh. And this one, because it was something different, I dove in even deeper, and we start talking about the miscarriage that my wife and I had. And I was like, man, this gives me a little room to get even deeper into my life. And the response that we have gotten from men and women who have been through miscarriage, when I hear people send me messages and say, oh my God, you finally got my husband talking about it. We thought we were alone. The fact that you guys are now, when I walk my wife on stage and she's at that point 7 months pregnant, and I just told you this story about how we lost this baby, it's just a beautiful moment.
For sure.
That I don't think I would have ever been able to put into a stand-up special had it not been the circumstances.
I think everything that you're saying is on point. Forget all the funniness and the great material and all that. It's very inspiring to see how you've adapted and adjusted. And I don't think that you'd probably be this guy had that first big break at 19 and writing for Mencia. I don't think that that's the guy I'd be talking to. So maybe it's just a wonderful blessing that it's a longer term success story.
I don't disagree. I think I'd be dead. I honestly think that I would be a different man. I always say that my wife saved my life. I've grown up a lot through the process of my life and what I've gone through.
Sure.
And yeah, had I gotten success at 22 or 23, I don't know, where I would be. And same with a guy like Joe Rogan, where,
yeah,
he had this commercial success and then it went away. And then he had commercial success and then it went away.
Yeah.
And it made him
the new man show. I mean, we can't forget that one.
Right. And for all of us comics, and Mitzi Shore,
yeah.
God rest her soul, she used to say, you're not a comic until you've been doing this for 20 years. And Jay Leno says the same thing. He says, at 7 years, you should be a working comic. At 15 years, some people should know who you are. At 20 years, you start becoming famous. and it's funny that I've seen the same, right, with all my friends. I mean, Bill Burr is now considered one of the best comedians of all time. Well,
Right.
Bill Burr and I were running into each other in Richmond, Virginia, where he was playing the Richmond Funny Bone. I'm playing the Virginia Beach Funny Bone. And we're both going, how do you sell tickets? I don't know. And then here we are, obviously he's older than me, and that's another thing. I'm playing Funny Bone, the same Funny Bone he's playing. And he's 10 years ahead of me going, how do you sell tickets? And I'm sitting there 10 years behind him going, I don't know how to sell tickets,
Sure.
But it's definitely, I think you're 1,000% right. I would not be the man that I am today had I not had the journey that I've had.
Right. So beyond, check out the new special, check out the dates and all that. Any last words for the kids?
No, I mean, I just hope that people find this special, watch it. I always say that it is a special for everybody, but I think if you're married, if you're married with kids, I think that this special is something that, and all my specials, from Relatable to Till Death to My Life in Quarantine, I think they're all kind of episodes of my life. So I think that if they find it, I think they'll find it and enjoy it. And I've noticed that once people find it, they'll share it. So please share it. Veterans Day is right around the corner, and we're trying to raise money for our veterans. So enjoy the show. Watch it at home. Laughter is the best medicine.
Sure.
Comics are essential.
Yes, agreed.
But that's it, man. I mean, I'm just glad to be, talking to you. Thank you.
Well, congratulations to you and Renae for all the projects that you have going on at once, and really looking forward to seeing you live in New York when things get normalish again.
Look, man, I am ready to get back on the road. And the funny part is I was, me and my road manager, things had become very chaotic on the road. I mean, from, full green rooms and meet and greets afterwards and press and everything. And me and my road manager were like, we just need a break. And then all of a sudden we found ourselves in quarantine, painting a room going, yeah, screw this break. We got to go back on the road.
You need a break from the break. Exactly.
But I'm ready, man.
Looking forward to everything that's coming. Just keep it up. And thank you so much for your time, Steve.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Paltrocast.